Welcome to another season preview. Today we have the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers are one of the teams where it's so difficult to predict what they're going to be. I feel like they have a lower floor than people are willing to talk about, and they have a high ceiling, but there's such a variance in between. Jordan Love was drafted in 2020. That is the same draft class as Tua Tagovailoa, Joe Burrow, and Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts. All those guys, we know what those guys are. And I feel like for the last 4 or 5 years, we're just waiting for Jordan Love to become who they want him to be. And he had that great stretch of games in 23, and we thought this is it. And then last year wasn't necessarily the breakout we expected. And I don't want the time's not ticking on his career, but the time is ticking for him to prove to us that he can take it to another level. People were willing to put him in close to top seven quarterback territory after that little stretch of games in 23, and he didn't play anywhere close to that last year. And he's got good weapons, good protection, so I'm not willing to sit here and make him a not my fault candidate. If the offense isn't succeeding, it is his fault. And they even doubled down on giving him weapons in a year in which I don't think they should have, but they did. They drafted Matthew Golden in the first round, and they drafted Savion Williams in the third round. They were already four wide receivers deep, and now they are six. Their wide receiver six is Dontavian Wicks. I think he is the average wide receiver three. So to me, you don't really maximize value by making a wide receiver three, a wide receiver six, when your cornerback room is as bad as it is. Or what other positions do I think? They could also use positional upgrades at coverage linebacker. I don't love Quay Walker. Also think, aside from Kenny Clark up the middle, I don't love what they have there. So, and another thing about their roster is that there's stars sprinkled in every now and then. I think Rashawn Gary can play like a star. Kenny Clark can play like a star. Xavier McKinney has played like a star. And then on offense, you have Josh Jacobs and Zach Tom, Elton Jenkins. Those guys play like stars. But other than that, it's just like above average players. But there's no like real holes except for corner, I would say. But I want to start on the offense, and I talked about the wide receiver room. You've got Romeo Doubs. Now you drafted Matthew Golden, Jayden Reed. You drafted Savion Williams, Christian Watson, and Dontavian Wicks. That's six wide receivers. And Christian Watson is coming off that Week 18 ACL tear. He has been doing non-contact drills at camp and running routes in shorts as of 2 weeks ago. So I don't expect him to return week one, but maybe after their bye or maybe right before. They have a really early bye week, which is why I say maybe he returns after their bye, which would be week 6. But anyways, when he comes back, there's six wide receivers deep. And then at line, I think it's a pretty under-discussed class or cast of characters. From left to right, you have Rasheed Walker, you have Aaron Banks, Elton Jenkins at center, Sean Ryan at right guard, and Zach Tom at right tackle. Center through right tackle, I love. Aaron Banks, I'm iffy on. I don't know really if he is a good player or just a serviceable one. And then the opinion is still out on Rasheed Walker. I think obviously the weak link in that room is Rasheed Walker. His offensive line coach even came out with a quote this offseason saying Rasheed Walker is a left tackle for the Green Bay Packers. And that's as far as he would go. So I don't know how long Walker's leash is, especially considering they have a 2024 first-round pick invested in Jordan Morgan, who is currently their swing tackle. And then you also drafted Anthony Belton in the second round this year. And Jordan Morgan has not been good in the limited reps he's gotten up until this point. So, and that's the reason for him being behind a 7th-round pick from 2022 who hasn't gotten the confidence from his offensive line coaches, because Jordan Morgan hasn't either. The Packers' tight end room is one of the most underrated position groups in the entire NFL. You have Tucker Kraft, who took advantage of a Luke Musgrave injury in his rookie season and kind of never gave the tight end one job back. And then Luke Musgrave, obviously, they create a great 1-2 punch. And I think this is another example of the NFL slowly yet rapidly moving away from uh, the hive mind of there's a tight end one and a tight end two. Teams are just using two tight ends very consistently and getting both of them touches. Luke Musgrave is more of that slot tight end receiving threat with his legs, while Tucker Kraft is, a receiving threat as well. Big body, strong hands, but he's a much better blocker. Then at running back, you have one of the best running backs in the NFL from the last half decade in Josh Jacobs. You hate to say it, but is the clock ticking on his career? He was drafted in 2019, so you'd like to think no, but how old is he? He's 27, so I'd say he has 2 or 3 more good years ahead of him. I honestly thought he was older. I thought he was like 29. But he's going to have to be a focal point of this offense if Jordan Love doesn't take a step forward. And this year is the year for me where I say, Jordan Love, it's make or break. If you do the same thing you did last year, that's who you are as a player now, officially. Until you prove to me otherwise, that's who you are. And obviously, if he has his breakout year, great. But I'm not really counting on it at this point. Again, he was drafted in 2020. He's going into his 6th year. But overall, I think the offense, excuse me, is pretty good. There's no real holes except for left tackle, which is a big hole, but it's definitely they can overcome it. And especially with a guy who was a rookie last year in Jordan Morgan, if he can just make some progress, take a step forward, all of a sudden this offense is across the board pretty solid. Their defense, they run a lot of nickel. I wonder how that's going to change with a with a lack of depth in the secondary, which really scares me. Their front four is really solid. On one side, you have Rashawn Gary, who I think, when he is healthy, is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. And then on the other side of him, you have Lucas Van Ness, who was a first-round pick out of Iowa in 2023. Hadn't really hit his stride in 23, but 24, he took some steps forward, and I look forward to seeing him take on more of a role this year. In terms of depth, you drafted Baron Sorrell in the 4th round this year, and you drafted Colin Oliver in the 5th round, and then you have Kinsley Enagbare and Brenton Cox to fill out that room. Overall, pretty deep room. You're gonna want to see at least one of Colin Oliver or Baron Sorrell make a real impact for the team as a rotational defensive end, so you can have real depth in that room. And then up the middle, you have Devontae Wyatt, 2022 first round pick, and then next to him, one of the Packers' best players of the 21st century, and Kenny Clark. He's been around since 2016, and he's been the just epitome of consistency. And then behind them, you have big boy Nazir Stackhouse and Carl Brooks. Additionally, he drafted Warren Brinson in the 6th round. I don't know how big of an impact he's going to be able to make. Moving up to linebackers, they usually only trot out 2 linebackers out there because, like I said, they love to run nickel, as most teams do nowadays. They have Edgerrin Cooper, the 2nd round pick in 24 last year, and I think already he's a top 10 linebacker in the league. He had an amazing rookie year, especially down the stretch. After the first few games, he really got into his groove, and he looks the part. And then next to him at the weak side linebacker is going to be Quay Walker. Quay Walker has talent, but he just has mental lapses, whether it be shoving opponents, coaches, infractions, whatever it may be. He's got to clean up his act on the field to be able to be as effective as possible for the team. And then behind Edgerrin Cooper, in terms of depth, you have Isaiah McDuffie, who came out last year and was really good for them. So that is one of the better depth linebackers you're going to see in the NFL. And then behind Quay Walker, you have Isaiah Simmons, former first-round pick, top 10 pick. He signed by way of the Giants. Hasn't panned out to what we thought he could be, but again, that's good depth for them. The cornerback room is where I get really skeptical of this team and this defense specifically. They obviously haven't been with Jair Alexander a ton in the last 3 or 4 years. But looking on paper, the names on this roster is pretty jarring. You have Nate Hobbs, who you signed, and I love Nate Hobbs. I think he's a great player. He signed to a multi-year contract. I think that's a great signing. But then on the other side, you have Keyshawn Nixon, who I don't think is a serviceable boundary corner. If anything, I think he's a slot guy. And in the slot, they have Javon Bullard, last year's second round pick in the 2024 draft. He's fine. Um, doesn't stand out to me as some difference maker on the defense. So I think Nate Hobbs on a contending team is a cornerback too, and he's a cornerback one here by a decent margin. Nobody is pushing his cornerback one title. And then you have Keyshawn Nixon, who I think it's disrespectful to strictly call him a return man at this point. Like he's proven to be able to be serviceable on the defensive end, but he is not a cornerback, boundary cornerback two in the NFL. He should be a depth piece. And then behind them, you have Carrington Valentine, a seventh round pick from 2023, and you have Bo Melton, who was a wide receiver last year. So, in my opinion, this room is terrible. This is a terrible group, and in a division with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Roma Dunze, DJ Moore, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, these guys are going to get slaughtered vertically. Luckily, they have one of the best safety rooms in the NFL. You have Xavier McKinney, who played like a top three safety in the league last year. And then next to him, you have Evan Williams, 2024 fourth round pick, who played good when healthy, just got hurt down the stretch, but he quickly made it known that he is going to be a problem at the top of the defense. Now that we've taken a look at their roster and I've voiced my concerns and what I like about it, let's take a look. Let's do the thing where we take a look at their schedule and predict their record. All right, the Packers start the season with 2 straight home games. Week 1, they host the Detroit Lions, and then Week 2, they host the Commanders on Thursday Night Football. And then they follow that up with 2 road games, one against the Browns, and then one against the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. The Packers starting the season 2-2 here. I think all games are winnable. Especially, they're playing the Lions Week 1 when the Lions have all those scheme changes and turnover. I think that could be a sneaky steal game. And then the Commanders, if they don't have Terry McLaurin at this point, they could steal that one. I think the Browns is an easy win. And the Cowboys could be an easy win. It depends if they have Micah Parsons, but I still think even with Micah Parsons, the Packers are probably the better team. I'm going to go with 2-2 though, because I could see them losing 3 of these games. And week 5 is that bye week, and I think Christian Watson returns here against the Bengals week 6. And then they finish October with 2 road games against the Cardinals and then the Steelers on Sunday Night Football. I have the Packers going 2-1 here. I think they could lose any of these games, but I also think that they're going to be favored in all of them. So I'm going to go 2-1. Forgot a logo for the Panthers apparently, but they play the Panthers week 9 at home, and then they host the Eagles week 10 on Monday Night Football before a week 11 road game against the Giants. Week 12, they host the Vikings, and then week 13 is Thanksgiving in Detroit. I'm going to have them going 3-2 in this stretch. I think the most probable losses, if they beat the Lions week 1, I think they split with the Lions. So they, depending on if they beat the Lions week 1, they probably lose here or vice versa. I don't think the Lions get both on them. I don't think they get both on the Lions. I also think they likely split with the Vikings. So that could be how it goes. I think they probably lose to the Eagles. I mean, the Eagles are insane. So maybe they beat the Vikings, Giants, and Panthers in this stretch. Final stretch of the season sees them host the Bears, travel to the Mile High to play the Broncos, then travel to Chicago to play the Bears again, host the Ravens, and then travel to Minnesota to finish the season against the Vikings. I have them going 2-3 here. I think traveling to Denver is really difficult. I think playing the Bears two games in 3 weeks is going to be difficult to sweep them. The Ravens is a difficult game, and if they beat the Vikings in November, I think they lose to them in December. So with that being said, I have the Packers going 9-8, and this would be disappointing. And this likely means that Jordan Love doesn't break out. He doesn't become what we want him to be. And I kind of am banking on that at this point because he hasn't shown me otherwise. He showed me what? A 5 game or so sample size in 23, that is not enough for me. We are too far removed from that for me to say that's who he is. That was a very small sample size. And they have a difficult schedule and a difficult division. I find it hard to believe that they are going to separate themselves as this contending team when they have glaring issues at left tackle and cornerback. They don't have they don't have many positions where it's like this is an elite group. This is you have a superstar here. It's a lot of guys who are pretty good, and while that's great and all, you need those superstar guys to go out and win you games. And being 6 wide receivers deep is great, but when none of them are superstars, it only does so much. So, anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you enjoyed. Am I too low on the Packers or am I too high on the Packers? Or am I just right? Whatever you think, let me know. I love you very much, and I will see you next time. Adios.